So, what are you? Are you just
What am I?
What's your deal?
What's my deal? Well, I'm engaged to Timothy Wilcott's, better known as Latrice Royale. So I guess I identify as gay. But I have had sex with other gender-identified folks.
See, it's funny because in my generation, I think it's becoming more of a loose thing where gender doesn't exist. Sexuality is sort of an illusion. People are actually understanding that gender and genitalia are two completely different things,
right?
Really, and I think what's good about performers like Latrice and RuPaul and all these different drag acts in general is it's this beautiful way of blending the line, and it's consumable for people that might not view themselves in the most liberal light.
Right.
You know, because it's funny, but not the wrong funny.
Right, correct. Yeah. Well, RuPaul always talks about drag being intended to sort of mock society and its norms. It's meant to thumb its nose and at convention and expectation. So yeah, it can be funny. It can also be very empowering and political.
I just think that must be a worry about the wrong kind of laugh. I don't know if that happens much.
Well, sure. I mean, like, with Latrice in particular, it doesn't happen as much with some other people. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
So most people are a little bit afraid to laugh at him in particular.
Yeah.
I used to do a little bit of drag, but I was never what I would call a drag queen.
Yeah.
I was more of a little bit of a performance artist, and if I had something to say, that would wind up on my body. And I definitely experienced what you were calling like the wrong kind of laugh. But that was also my point. I wanted society to see that someone that they had considered a sane individual, and one of them was capable of expressing a side of humanity that they weren't acknowledging, and that really just meant that they laughed at it and didn't really want to look at it or deal with it.
I think it's funny because in Britain right now we're in this crisis of, I think it's due to a divide. It's super liberal people, open-hearted people, love everyone people, and then this other side of it, like, that's not right. And a war seems to.
I think that shows up in your drag culture here too. There's very clearly different worlds of drag in the UK. Some would say that that's sort of divided by generations, although I'm sure that there are exceptions to that rule. I'm sure that there are young people interested in traditional British drag, and I'm sure that there are older people that are interested in younger, more queer and RuPaul's Drag Race sort of influenced drag that's happening.
British drag is born from sort of a different place than American drag. In British drag, it was born from, variety acts and
correct.
And of course,
out of comedy, really.
We've got pants over here where it's just decided that a man will dress as a woman and play the female part in a fairy tale, which, when you think about
which is also true in America, but if in America they know that you're serious about it, if they know that you actually would want to act on some of the feelings associated with the idea of someone who wants to put on a dress, then you're like, Flip Wilson is a really good example. He was a comedian who had his own show and would often get in drag, but because he was perceived to be straight, it was harmless. But if someone was gay acting and then would want to put on a dress, I think that there was often a different repercussion for that.
What I found surprising with Latrice's act in general is this sincerity that comes along with it.
It's interesting because Latrice is a character, but Tim manages to communicate his story very effectively through her without really changing his character, if that makes any sense. His personal character. I mean, some girls, especially drag performers who in some way identify as transsexual or transgendered or actually desire to be the other sex, it's I think must be more complicated for them to distinguish between their character and their personality and what they do in their daily lives. For Latrice, it's much more simple. Yeah. Tim is not Latrice, and Latrice is not Tim. But it's a wonderful balance that he's found to be able to tell his story through her.
And throughout the performance, I was sobbing. It was funny, but actually funny. It wasn't. I don't know. And it was very pure.
Well, I was just saying to the promoter Andrew Hoyle here, who and Latrice said it on stage tonight, that the beauty of this story is that in seeing Latrice act it out, you know that the story has a happy ending.
Yeah.
So you're able to go to some really dark and ugly places within yourself. And if you've ever been through anything, if you've ever lost a parent, if you've ever been arrested, if you've ever been, God forbid, incarcerated, if you've lost a job, if you've won any of this, there's so many ways that somebody can connect with a story like Latrice's and realize that they've probably had significant advantages that Tim was not given. And so in spite of all those disadvantages, he's been able to rise above.
It was because obviously it was mentioned on the show, very loosely, it wasn't detailed. And when I read up about it, I came to the realization that there are a ton of people who've probably gone through that situation who have not ended up.
Myself included.
You know?
Myself included. I was pulled over for speeding and arrested for possession of marijuana, and I do believe that because I was Caucasian and because I was articulate in a certain way and had certain privileges, that I had an easier experience. I did not have previous charges, which is part of Latrice's situation, but I think it did make a difference.
Well, I've seen it a lot on the internet where people have tried to pretend white privilege doesn't exist when it is so blatantly obvious it does in every way, shape or form. You if you're a white person, you have to accept that there is complete benefit of that it will be used for you, and if you pretend it doesn't exist, you're part of that problem.
Well, it takes a lot for someone a white person who doesn't know that white privilege exists to understand it. I even got in some heated conversations with some distant relatives about it who didn't quite understand and felt judged and called out by their children for bringing it up. And they're very Christian, and to me, the idea of white privilege is very based in the concept of what Christ taught. Some people have it more fortunate than others, so don't act like an asshole. You know?
It's very different. British culture and the philosophy of gay culture in Britain is very different than America in the way that we're a very secular society. So a lot of families find accepting if their son's gay or if their son's whatever, they accept it a lot easier than I feel that happens in America, because sometimes it's like, well, that's weird, but it's not because God's going to kill you, it's just because it's different, and then they accept it.
Well, and our situation is especially when I first started dating Tim and really facing the idea of bringing him home to the family, there's a lot of stereotypically negatives, for my family that is obviously white. I'm bringing a big black ex-con drag queen home to meet mom, you know what I mean? And so, fortunately, she has been able to move past some preconceived notions. I mean, my family would argue biblically that even just an interracial relationship might not be what they would approve of or prefer for their child. So this is an interracial homosexual relationship on a global scale that people are paying attention to. So it's been fortunate for me that they've been able to accept him.
I think it might be a bit of an obvious question, but are there pressures to being publicly seen. You know, you're on stage together, you have your life together, you have your job together, you obviously like each other, but there must be a pressure to going out in front of an audience and having to perform.
We're both performers, and we don't really know how to do anything else. I think we do find some comfort, I think, in being able to do this together. Like, you have someone to go on the ride with, and anybody that picks the life that we have chosen are going to feel those pressures of being in the public eye. I have thus far worked really hard at kind of staying over in the corner and letting her have the spotlight, because to me the price of fame is anonymity.
Yeah.
You lose the ability to walk through an airport without being recognized or whatever. And so I have been sort of a little over in the corner, but especially since he proposed to me on stage in a very public way that kind of went out there, we've come to kind of understand, I think, that our relationship seems to symbolize a lot of things to people. We represent, I hope, a desire and an ability to see past differences and to the core of a person, and to fall in love with that. And that is definitely something that I, as a skinny white boy in the gay community, have found lacking. So for a bigger black man, I think that who does drag, I think it's even more complex, you know. So even though it might feel like pressure, it's also that pressure, if you want to call it that motivates us to keep doing what we're doing. Because I do believe that what Latrice does makes the world a little bit of an easier place for a lot of people to be. Whatever you kids get out with Latrice, you don't get out with anybody else in the world. She helps you express something about life, and so I'm really happy to get to contribute to that. And even when it sucks, I'm honored to get to do it.
I think the what seems to happen, and tonight was no exception to that. People seem to gain from Latrice a belief in themselves, or a belief that you
Correct.
can be confident, and
Correct.
you've been through what you've been through. Whatever I'm going through, I can get over it. I
Correct.
can succeed and be myself while doing it. Like, I think they learn to feel like they don't have to change to benefit someone else's view of the world.
And that's the lesson I learned with him and through him every day, being his partner. I don't know if you knew this or not, but just last week my grandmother passed away, and she was kind of the woman that really helped raise me when my father wasn't around. My mom had to work, so it was grandma that I was really with, and that's been a real tough week for me. And as you heard tonight, Tim lost his mother while he was in jail, and because of his choices, he was completely unable to participate in the tribute of her and to have what we would consider proper closure. So to be here with him, still helping him tell that story, and receiving the support of him as a partner in work and in life, is really, really profound and moving. And so we have a friend that talks about drinking while pouring. And so even if it's pressure, we try to drink while we pour. We know that we get a lot from being able to share our story, and we get the evidence that we are not alone, and we hope that we always give that to the audience too.
So obviously performing together was a completely natural development.
It turned out that way.
happened.
One of the first things I ever said to him when we met was, I think I know what you're doing, so if you agree with me, I'd love to hang out. If you don't, I'll get out of the way really quick. And then one day at home, I was just playing Summertime on the piano, and he came in kind of jokingly making fun of like an old slave song, like singing a little bit like Paul Robeson. If you don't know who he is, go look that up. Then I let him do it. I didn't stop him, you know. And when he was done, I went, you know, you didn't miss a note, and you could do that in front of people, and nobody'd be mad, right? because nobody else is. You know what I mean? Everybody's trying to cover Lady Gaga and Cher and Kesha, and we're talking about Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday. So one of the keys to Latrice's success has always been stay in your own lane. And musical theater is what I know. Cabaret and church and music and piano are my skill sets. That's what I know. So we're really lucky that we found a way to be able to do it together.
I think that was the most surprising thing, because it wasn't presented on RuPaul. I came here today.
Well, most of what the contestants of RuPaul's Drag Race are best at don't get featured on the show.
So I showed up today thinking, oh, it's just going to be an hour lip sync, and I was excited for that. And then the voice happens, and I'm like, why did I keep it? And then this, and it becomes theatre.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
It was a beautiful thing. Now, obviously, you're inspired by jazz. You know, the way you play is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Touch is amazing. So I assume Hallelujah tonight was dedicated to your grandmother.
I actually played it at her funeral. That was the opening to her service. So Andrew, the promoter, had an idea for a pre-show, and I just felt like that would be appropriate. It seemed like it went well with the other acts, and kind of gave me especially last night in London, I came directly from basically burying my grandmother to London to do the show. And I kind of needed something to ground me before we went into When You're Good to Mama, so it gave me the opportunity to do that.
It was beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And
I'm a big Jeff Buckley fan.
Yeah,
I gotta shout that out.
Well, I thought with the opening, it was like the guitar harmonic on the Jeff Buckley
Yes,
version.
it's my tip of the hat to him.
Because
most people listen to Rufus Wainwright or Katie Lang, and there are other great recordings, and to each his own. But Jeff Buckley really articulated the pain of an Hallelujah. You're not always praising God.
Yeah.
When you say Hallelujah, it can mean whatever expression that you can't articulate to your God.
What I found satisfying with the way you play is you seem to have a grasp on grace notes. It sounds like a pun after talking about Jeff Buckley, but your grace notes are there's a delicate nature to them. Like you definitely have taste in where to flourish and where to.
Oh, thanks.
To amp it up or make it a bit more. Oh, I can actually play, because part of your job as the man on the side is to proper.
I consider if there's anything different about me as a piano player, I hope, than a lot of other people, it would be that I help tell the story.
Yes.
There are people that play more perfectly than myself. There are people that play more technically than myself. But Latrice is telling a story, and so my job is to help do that in this situation.
Do you believe that in relationships there's a language that is created between brains? So
there's this theory.
Do you think does that help?
I actually have a tattoo on my chest that started as an infinity symbol, and I got it updated into a twin flames inspired joined hands. And the twin flames is the concept that two souls that once were previously joined in another life consciously choose to come into this experience in order to find each other.
Yes.
And so a friend of mine called Joey let me know that his perception of our relationship was that of a twin flames. And so I think I've always said, when you meet the bitch that can deal with you, you know.
Yeah.
We spoke each other's language very quickly, and I hope and think that translates on the stage.
It does, I think this, because obviously the piano is you emote through it, so
You're fine.
So you emote through the piano, and it feels like you're replying, you're conversating with your instrument to that. It's
I'm going to shout out to one other inspiration here. There's an act called Kiki and Herb. I don't know if you guys know them over here. Kiki is portrayed by an individual called Justin Vivian Bond, and her accompanist is Kenny Melman, and you can see Kenny play for hours without stopping, all new material, just to keep up with Kiki, and I play very differently than Kenny. We are not the same pianist, but it's always been my goal to be able to keep up with him. And so I learned a lot from watching him perform, because he's the master of this craft to me. He really can amplify a story and hit you somewhere from the piano. Not every pianist can get you from the guts.
It's funny him walking in the room, because he's my boy. Smile.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
And what I've said to him in the past is that my belief is that during the Big Bang, when all the molecules completely separated, when we're on life as beings, those molecules are just trying to reach each other again.
Sure.
So
sure.
like, when you meet that person,
we are stardust, we are golden,
exactly.
And we are just trying to get back to the garden.
It's your molecules going, but we know each other.
Right.
We've seen each other before.
Right.
We're alright. We should be by each other. And when you feel that, it's just right. And it's a beautiful thing to see you two perform together and have that unspoken language and that unspoken rhythm, and you finish each other's sentences.
We really do.
But with piano and voice, and it's an amazing thing.
We'll catch ourselves often saying the same thing at the same time, and yeah, we both think we're so individual, but then we're not.
But it was an amazing performance.
Thank you.
And yeah, I felt everything, and it was incredibly pure and very sincere.
Well, that was the magic of a performer like Jeff Buckley,
Yeah.
or Judy Garland, or Billie Holiday, or
It's honesty.
Morrissey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whatever pick your genre, but when it's the truth, it's the truth.
Yeah, and be it through yourself, or be it through a persona, or be it through whatever it is, it's all art, and it's all just trying to be honest in front of an audience. And I think you achieved that, definitely.
Thank you.